on the chair of the HYLA CLE committee this bar year. So we're in for a real treat today. For those of you who have been coming to our CLEs for a long time, you're going to recognize our speaker. She's presented some great presentations for us in the past, and we're really fortunate that she's back here again for this bar year. So this presentation is going to be on advising small businesses. So Ali Gutierrez is a partner at Martin Gutierrez, LLP. I worked directly with Ali at Norton Rose Fulbright a couple years ago. She is one of the go-to lawyers as far as I'm concerned. She's very knowledgeable. She's always willing to share her expertise, and she's a great resource on this topic and many others. So she's one of those lawyers that I'm very fortunate to know and also to be able to share with HYLA. So we're really lucky to have her here today. Ali, if you want to go ahead and kick things off, and towards the end, I'll go ahead and give everybody the MCLE number. And if you all have questions, please drop them in the chat. Thank you for joining us.
One in the chat already. Hi, everybody. My name is Ali Gutierrez, and like Daniel said, I am a partner at Martin Gutierrez LLP, which is a firm me and a former coworker of mine started in July of last year. And I'm sorry if you can hear the dog barking in the back. He's being trained to not bark, and that means he's pretty noisy right now, but he'll go inside soon. But yeah, so a little bit about me. Like Daniel said, we used to work together at Fulbright, and then I went to a small firm, and then from there, a mid-sized firm, and then, my solo practice. And I've done something sort of a little bit different in each place. And it wasn't until I got here to my solo practice, or I guess my own practice, my partner, that I started doing more transactional and small business related things. I've done a lot of litigation, and my background really was insurance defense, that type of work. So I didn't know anything about, the transactional side, the business side, the small business side, the contract side, like all of that stuff. The last time I'd read it was back in law school. So it was a bit of a new experience for me, but one that I'm really thankful for and one that I've gotten to enjoy. So I want to sort of help anyone here who's currently doing that or wanting to get into that and have questions. I know for me, I sort of fell into it. And so I don't know that I ever would have geared myself towards doing it, but I'm very thankful I have the chance. So I do, because I want to be able to provide helpful resources to everybody. If you have a question, please put it in the chat or however this works. I really want to make sure that I'm responding to what you guys are looking for and what you'd like to hear in your practice. And I'm going to type in one message real quick to Daniel. So I don't know if any of you guys, I wish I could see hands or something. Can I do like a poll? Is that it? People can raise their hands or no?
I think that they can raise the hand on the, it should be on the bottom of everybody's Zoom screen, as long as you're on like a desktop version. I don't think that's on mobile.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering how many people are actually currently advising small businesses and how many are hoping to get into that sort of practice.
I see one hand up.
I don't see it. Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay, 2, 3.
I should have asked that question better.
Okay, yeah, there's 3 so
okay.
far.
And if you want to put in the chat what kind of businesses you're advising, you can go ahead and drop those in, because it does sort of vary depending on the type of clients you have. So for me, my clients, the majority of them tend to, I interact directly with the business owners. So they're still small to maybe mid-sized businesses, between 10 to 50 employees. They tend to be global. They tend to be all pertaining to IP and software in various areas. So I've got medical IP and software. I've got financial IP and software, all that stuff. Perfect. yeah, I've done a little bit of work with a beauty salon, and it's perfect. Yeah, great. So I'm probably going to start with the more tech IP software type contracts, then do more restaurants and bars, and then end with any things that have licensing authorities that you might have to deal with. So for those of you that practice, you might, and I'm sure that you probably already have found, that a lot of these companies don't have a very strong in-house presence. And I don't know if that's true all around, but for me, their in-house is really just to make sure that business is comporting with all the laws I need to be comporting with. And my job is more to handle the contracts that are going in and out with other companies. And if, again, any input to sort of guide to make sure that I'm getting you guys the information you need, I can absolutely, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll adapt as I go along. But the number one thing that I sort of had to do at the outset, and this is just me and my lack of foundational knowledge and contracts at the beginning, was to go ahead and get Westlaw, which if you have your own practice, you know, is very expensive. And I specifically, what helped me was the practical law portion of Westlaw. It is a pricey add-on, but what it has on there is every type of contract you can imagine, all kinds of parties, pro, you know, vendor, pro subcontractor, pro everybody. And it gives you all those things that you need to include. So the way that they break it down is they have standard clauses, optional clauses, and you can sort of morph those things into whatever it is that your client needs. But more than creating a contract, which is very important, but that I feel Practical Law does a good job of, is reviewing everything to make sure that your client isn't getting in trouble. And I don't know, again, if this is across the board, but one thing that I find is that business owners tend to be very business minded. They are not thinking about the legal implications of the stuff they're signing. They are trying to run a successful business. And so when you approach them with, hey, I've reviewed this contract, here are my concerns, I found that, you know, it's our job to make sure they know all of the concerns that they've got. They understand everything that could possibly happen and the pros and cons of going each way. A lot of the times I have clients who respond by saying, well, thank you for your input. This was very important, but I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway. What's the worst thing that can happen to me? And, you know, thankfully it's never been anything illegal, but it's been things where, like, well, I wouldn't advise it for these reasons, but you go ahead, and they've gone ahead and done it because really what their priority is making good business decisions. And I'm there sort of noting these things on the back end so that I know what I need to sort of keep an eye out for in the future in case that stuff pops up. I've also found that, and it might be that I also run a small firm, but if you work for these kinds of clients, you might find that they can be very, I don't want to say needy, but very stressed out, because a lot of the times they're coming to you with time sensitive contracts. They don't want to lose out on projects or partnerships or what have you. And the time at which you get those contracts might be 10 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock in the morning. It might be something you've never seen before. And it involves a lot of being sort of on call almost and responsive. And so again, one thing that I found for me that's really helpful is to, all of my business clients or business owners have my direct cell phone line, and I've asked them to send me text messages if after hours they need me to pay attention to my inbox. But if you run your own firm, you can also do that through Google Voice. If you don't want to give out your cell phone number, you can sign up for a number for free, and then you can text back and forth. And I found that really settles some of these business owners that feel as though they need immediate help right now or everything is going to fall apart. And I know people who use that as their main texting number instead of their cell phone, because it does let you access all your contacts in your phone, but send messages from a number that's not yours. And it's hard because there's a bunch of different types of businesses here. For tech companies and I'll start with that stuff. Do you guys have any specific questions about more IP focused, technology focused? I know EU data protection has been a thorn in the side of very many contract attorneys in the past couple of months. So if there's one area in particular you are hoping to discuss, please feel free to put that in there. And Daniel, if there's something that you think you would like to know more about, or that I'm sort of assuming in knowledge that I haven't talked about, just let me know and I can go into detail. So let me see. I mean, just generally for the tech and e-commerce stuff, if you're not actively working on a client, and this is, I'm not assigning homework, but there is so much changing when it comes to IP and software. There's constant new decisions, new rulings that it's important to stay on top of. I sign up for news alerts that come into my phone that ping certain words, just keeping a tab on everything, because that stuff is developing quickly. Clauses that we never had to consider before, we're having to suddenly consider now. NDAs, confidentiality stemming from software contracts is exploding. And depending on what venue your client wants to work in, how much knowledge you're going to need is going to vary. So I know that for me, most of my businesses, my business clients aren't signing contracts with other Texas companies. They're signing contracts with foreign companies or a company in another state. And so a big thing that we come to deal with is venue. And Texas law tends to be a pretty good, if you're representing a company, tends to be pretty good. And for me, I just like it. It's home field. I know what the law is here. I know the changes that are coming through. I am not nearly as confident. And when I see a lot, it's Illinois and obviously New York, Delaware. And each one, you would be surprised, has wildly different law on some of these different clauses. So as you're going through practical law, I mean, mine is geared towards Texas. But before I really put any key pivotal clause into or agree to any of those, I take that same clause, that phrase, and I search it with whatever venue they're proposing or whatever venue I think is going to win out. Because sometimes you'll see a clause, you'll say absolutely not, never in a million years. And it doesn't even matter, because in whatever venue you end up in, they don't enforce those. So there's no point in wasting all this time and energy fighting with somebody when it's not going to be enforced anyway, especially because usually there's other battles you're going to have to take up. So before you get too deep into it, you want to make sure that everything you're looking at pertains to the actual venue. So I find that they always put them at the end. I scroll to the end and I see what law am I actually dealing with, because that's going to change how I approach the entire contract. And then the second reason that you really want to keep up to date with this stuff is I've noticed that when you're dealing with other small companies, a lot of them try to take the tact of, oh, well, we're small businesses. We don't need anything fancy. We don't, anything too serious. Gentleman's agreement, all that stuff, which to a lawyer, it's just, I can never in good conscience advise somebody to take someone on their word when the paper says something different or something like that. And so as part of that informality that they try to sell my clients on, there's never a whole lot of definitions on there, which again, produces a really brief looking pretty 2-page contract, but really does nothing to protect anybody and is sort of a waste of time. So as I go in and build these definitions, I try to define them in such a way that they're addressing whatever concern I have with that jurisdiction. So that way, when they reappear later on in the contract, I'm not having to have that fight there. I put the definition exactly how I want it to be. I want it to mean these things, especially when it comes to things like intellectual property, work product, things like that really are going to cover what my client is making and giving to this person. I put everything that I want protected up front. Then that way the clause itself can read a lot more simply. But I get a lot of pushback from people on those definitions saying, well, that's just too fancy for what we need or whatever. I have never seen a contract that doesn't benefit from having definitions. And if you're aware of the jurisdiction you're going into and who you're going up against, like, it never hurts to just Google that name, see if that company pops up in a few places so that you can make sure that your clients are protected in that. When you're dealing with salons, restaurant, bars, those tend to be very domestic. So you've got a lot less evolving case law. IP is just exploding. And what you can and can't protect, what does and does belong to you, is constantly changing. And so there are times when I just put a clause that I know is superfluous right now, wouldn't be enforceable. But because I have the strong hope that one day the winds are going to go that way, or there's strong indication that the winds are going that way, for these other kinds of businesses, especially if they're based here in Texas, there's a lot less of that evolution. There's a lot less pressure to make sure you're keeping up to date with everything that's going on. Like I always advise other contracts attorneys, sign up for those updates. Like I know no one uses Bloomberg Law, but someone once told me they have good updates. So if they do, I mean, I still haven't signed up for it because I still don't use it, but you want to pull as many of those things as you can. You know, in Westlaw, when you log in, they give you the little articles or whatever. I look at those because especially on a global scale, it's just, I think we're really making that field of law right now. And if you're working with any company that does international dealings, there's a lot. There's a lot to consider. And before you really step into advising a company who wants to enter the EU or even wants to enter Russia, you want to make sure that you're understanding the requirements, because they've got things that say specifically, this needs to be in the contract or the whole thing is void, or you're going to be liable for the whole thing. And so if you're not keeping up to date, there's no way that you would know that they've got language that specifically needs to go in there. So just, I said tabbed for all that stuff for the EU data privacy laws, the new Russian data privacy laws, and it's not great to spend my free time reading all that stuff, but you have to, or you're going to miss some of those things that are being pushed through that happen pretty quickly. Domestically, it's a bit easier, especially if you do opt into Westlaw practical law. They've really got Texas down. They've got optional clauses, the likelihood of it being enforced. They've got key sites. They've got precedents citing how it's been handled in the past. It's a lot easier to produce that. However, one thing I've noticed when working with those clients, where tech companies might want to be more, I'm going to make the right decision for my business. Thank you for telling me that, but I'm going to move ahead over here. I found that my restaurant owners, my bar owners, my salon owners listen a lot better, but they fail to mention a lot of things up front. And I'm not sure why that is. I find that the tech business owners really overload you with information about themselves and their upcoming deal. These other business owners don't. And if you're not asking the right questions and phrasing it in the right way, you might be getting incorrect information that's then forming the basis of your contract. A lot of these people are specialists in whatever they're opening their business. And, you know, they've devoted their lives to eyelashes or this restaurant. Like I had one guy call me, he was finally opening up a restaurant bar. He had retired and he was going to use his life savings to open this, but he had no idea how. And when he called, he's like, well, the only reason I get a contract is in case I overserve somebody and they die. Well, that's not the only reason you might need a contract, sir. I mean, I hope that never happens. But if you're going to be opening a restaurant, you're going to need to be considering not just all your dram shop liability. I imagine, I was like, if you're going to be building it from the ground up, you're going to be starting with construction. You're going to be going to vendors. Are you going to have, you know, your hiring agreements, all of that stuff? It's a lot more than people think. And as I started talking to him, I realized he had never considered these things before, and he was sort of making them up as he went along. And when you have a business like that, it is a lot more business advising of small business advising. It's a lot more explaining what their considerations are at the outset. And it's a relief in a way, because you don't have a full grown company coming to you and telling you, this is the way we are. And then sometimes you have to fix it. You have a company that's just setting itself up, and you can help them structure in the correct way to avoid problems later on. But you really are going to have to walk them through that process, because a lot of people don't think about these things, you know, how every step usually has forms from the Secretary of State, has legal implications. They just want to buy a building, put a sign up, and own it. And, you know, unfortunately, as lawyers, our job is to kind of rain on that parade and say, that's not how it really works. And I've had people call, and we start as early as, what kind of business should I set up? And I'm not a business advisor. I'm a lawyer. So I always say the best I can do for you is give you the pros and cons of each, so you can see which one suits your business needs better. Once they pick that, helping them out with the forms, getting all of that stuff filed. When it comes to partnerships, those foundational forms such as partnership agreements, things like that, you really want to build strongly ironclad so that you're protecting that company from any sort of internal chaos later on down the road. And then once all of that is done, I'm like, you can think about your business as that building with the sign on it, right? Now we can work on getting you the building. Now we can work on getting you the sign once all of that stuff is done. And then asking them, a lot of times I'll say, have you done this? Have you done that? And they'll say, yes. Like, did you file the forms? Yeah, I did. They need more specificity than that. They need to know what forms that they filed. You have to make sure that you remember they might be very great business owners, but this is their first foray into opening a business a lot of these times. And so you want to make sure that they're not thinking how you're thinking. They think they've done it all. They're not going to tell you what they haven't done because they don't know what that is. And so you want to make sure that you're helping them cover all of those, check all those boxes, because if you speak in these broad terms as if they already know, a lot of the times you're not going to be getting the correct responses just because the people don't know how to quite answer them. And I'm going to read the chat here. Yeah, so this is a great question. So one thing that I find a lot that people ask me for referrals for, or that I've gone to ask for advice on, is actually finding CPAs and accountants to help me out, because those two are intrinsically linked. And I'm very lucky that for some reason, a lot of my undergrad friends grew up to be accountants, and I have accountants in my family. So I have good resources. But if you don't, one thing that I find, especially for insurance agents and things like that, the minute that you post on LinkedIn that you may possibly, potentially consider one day needing the services of an insurance agent, or even just post, I've started my own firm, or I'm taking on this new kind of client, you will be inundated with offers from a ton of people offering you not just insurance plans and options, but people who want to work with you. And when I first started out, I was getting a lot of these messages, and I was trying to reply to all of them. And I realized that that wasn't really helpful. There are certain people, when the messages come through, that come from, that come from reputable businesses who I share mutual connections with, who I look at their profile and they've got an established, business. They've been in it for a while. And I really like the tone of their message. I'll respond. And a lot of the times I say, if you need anything, let me know. I'd be happy to connect with you. A lot of them are a lot better than I am at circling back around and seeing if you need anything. And it takes a while for me to trust anybody, but just having that ongoing correspondence, opening that communication helps a lot, because then you start actually being able to build these relationships with these people that when the time comes and you need to call on them, you're able to, because you know them. And so there's these people I have that email me maybe every 3 months now that I've started talking to since I opened my business. And they wish me, they email me on the holidays or to follow up, or, to discuss something I might've mentioned last year. They are, especially insurance agents, are excellent self-marketers. And again, there's a whole lot of them, and you want to make sure that you're picking the people that have an established business that you feel comfortable with. And, a good way to do that is to start talking to them before you need them. And in your back and forth and in your conversations, and I do phone calls with them sometimes, you'll know which ones you have good rapport with, which ones have good knowledge that you'd be comfortable referring people out to. I'm trying to think for CPAs, because I really got lucky on knowing them. I guess if you happen to know any, you would be surprised at how many are willing to help you, because a lot of them, especially people who might not want to go partner at a big four firm, they're looking to build their own book of business so they can bounce from wherever they are. And so they're looking for connections as well. And so a lot of the time when I say, hey man, I'm looking for a good CPA to sort of connect with, people are willing to jump on it. You just have to make it known that that's what you're looking for. And a lot of these, especially if you're going for, again, somebody who partner track at big four isn't in their dreams, they'd like to work somewhere smaller, they'd like to open up their own shop. They need people like us as much as we need people like them. And so reaching out to people like that on LinkedIn, who, CPAs in general, who might be interested in starting to build those relationships, really help. And then, another way that I've been lucky, and something that if you have this opportunity, you can consider as well, clients can know really great people too. I mean, if you've got a business that's been around for a while that you're working with, they've got people that they work with, they've got people they've been impressed by, they've got people they didn't super like. And I followed that chain before. I've had a client say, I love this, agent. Great. Go to the agent. Well, I can't, but you know what? My colleague's a great agent and they might be willing to talk to you. And so utilizing the knowledge that your client has, because if your client's been around for a while, they've had a couple of years more than you have to build up that wealth of knowledge. And business owners are some of the best networkers I know. They've got an army of people behind them. They know someone who does everything because they've been there. And so even just discussing casually with your client, hey man, I'm looking to connect with a CPA. They can sometimes introduce you to some really great people. And then this is advice I've received and haven't actually taken. So I'm not sure how useful it would be, but every city, it does have a small business bureau, small business administration that you can sign up for. Texas has one. Heads up, big like asterisk, if you choose to go to the Texas SBA, they are a for-profit organization. They're not nonprofit. They're not affiliated with the state in any way. Local ones, city ones can be affiliated with the city. They tend to be nonprofit and really great places to go to happy hours, build connections, things like that. If you opt to go to the state level one, it's a lot of money. And while they do claim, and I'm sure they do have books of CPAs and agents and people who can help you, their resources are extremely hard to access. They're extremely unresponsive. And again, the whole thing looks like it's going to be a nonprofit state affiliated thing, and it really isn't. So I would not recommend, when I started out, spent like $800 to get into their little database, and it was a terrible decision on my part. So I wouldn't do that. But if you can go to your local city events, again, most clients attend those. They've been going for years. They know people who attend those things. They can take you and actually, or even if they don't take, you can take yourself and actually meet so many people, because those are the same people who are looking to also build their book of businesses. Let me do a quick Google real quick. I'm going to give Houston specific ones, obviously, as that is where I am. And if I can't find it very quickly, I'll email you, because I have been invited to a number of these and I want to get that out to you as well.
And there's also a really good question in the Q&A box. Just pointing that out.
I'm going to make a note here too. So what I'll do is, once this is over, hop back on my email and pull all those invites so that I can get you guys the names of the organizations, some sample events. I know some are, and this is lame and it shows how lame I am, I've gotten some for like my neighborhood small business bureau, like happy hour that's strictly for this tiny neighborhood that I grew up in. There's maybe like 30 people there and they have a monthly thing going on. So I'll send specific resources that I've worked with in the past, but even just getting on Facebook or LinkedIn and joining your communities, Google, wherever you live, like the Heights Small Business Bureau, there's probably a group of 30 or some people who are meeting every month, and they're people who are also looking to connect. And that's a great place to start because they tend to be free, and it helps you meet people who they can help you, introduce you to people who can. And let me go over to the Q&A box. Yes. Okay. For me, the most important resource that I have is Westlaw, Practical Law. And again, it is very pricey. If you work for a bigger firm or a firm that gives you Westlaw, a lot of times it's included. It's just weird and hard to get to and access. But when you open Westlaw and it shows you, US federal courts or whatever, underneath that, there's like entertainment law, sports law, like a little list of categories, and practical law, for me anyway, is one of them. And when you click on it, it is just the most incredible wealth of information. And actually, can I share? Let me pull it up so I can share my screen and show you guys an example of how to utilize it. Because for me, I take on new types of clients all the time. I'm constantly being presented with new problems I haven't dealt with before. And want to make sure I cover all of my bases, but a lot of times it can feel overwhelming even knowing where to start. So let me see here. Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. Okay. Share screen. Share. Sorry guys, give me 1 second. I really want to show you guys because it's really great. Okay. Okay, I have to quit and then reopen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
What should I click on to fix that?
Probably meetings preferences, maybe. Let me see.
Okay, did that fix it?
Let me try again. Yes. Cool. Wait, this little screen. Okay, hold on. Okay. Okay, so this is the homepage for Practical Law US. Here you can see small law firm resource center. If you're a solo or small firm here. My recently viewed agreements, let's see. So professional services agreements, MSAs, things like that are one of the most common things. You'll see here that I've got Texas pulled up. Okay, I do know why it's not working. Let me see. Okay, here we go. So why did it go small? All right, so here you see this is an independent contractor / consultant agreement. It gives you a general description of what you're looking at up here. You can automatically draft it like this. I don't use this function because every client likes your contract formatted in a special way. And if you use this, it can really make formatting complicated later on. Plus, a lot of the stuff you're not going to need. You're only going to need to pick and choose the clauses you need. So you'll read this before using the document. And it tells you when it's applicable, things you need to consider, different tests, different standards. All right, here. And then here, the bracketed text in all caps with information specific to particular circumstances. And they even have bracketed text for COVID, things like that. If your client's having people over or offering a service where an individual might come into contact with COVID, they've got you covered there too. And then here you see, they give you a sample clause, note services, all of these things to consider. You've got these sample definitions, places to put in client-specific information. And then here you've got this review was completed on this day, so it's pretty recent. And let me unshrink this now. Oh, I went all the way to the back. Okay, well here, homepage, Practical Law. And here's where you can see the different categories. You can search by sector, practice areas. This is the one I typically do, but you can also do resource types where you have standard documents, clauses, checklists, articles. So one thing that or toolkits as well. I do like toolkits. I typically, let's just do. Here, so we've got cloud services, national, federal. And here is everything that a business might need agreement-wise to consider or to create as they launch or move forward. And so what makes this so useful? Okay, could y'all see that? Okay, cool. Wait, what makes it so useful is that, again, when you have a client coming to you who's from a sector you've never really had experience in, who's or doing a kind of project you don't know a whole lot about, it's hard to know where to start. And as the business advisor or the business advising attorney, you have to be the person who's giving them everything that they need to consider. So you cannot miss any of these important things. So somehow you're going to have to know exactly what they are. So you can feel like you've got everything complete, but how do you really know? It's like a big problem in lawyer research. It's on that toolkit. If it's on that toolkit, then you're covered. And obviously, you want to supplement and just spot check, double check, but that gives you everything in one place so that you can give your client an idea of cost, how long it might take, the amount of agreements you need, considerations they might not have. You can sit here and just go through it with your client and basically say, I'm going to draft this for you. Do you, here are the options, A or B, C or D, E or F, and then go from there. And again, within the different expansions for each clause, especially in Texas, it'll give you case law. It'll give you the most recent case law. It'll give you different treatment in different jurisdictions, in Houston versus San Antonio. So even though it is very pricey, I mean, I can't imagine doing what I do without it. And one cool thing is if you contact a Westlaw representative, just go to Westlaw and get a representative and say, I'm interested in this service. They'll give you a free trial of practical law. And I think I got a 2-week free trial. And then when I told them I couldn't afford quite yet to subscribe officially, they gave me another 2 weeks. And so speaking of a network of people who are willing to help you, the Westlaw reps do a really good job of helping you get access to that. Mine also helped me find a special deal once I added it on because I couldn't afford it at full price. So if you're a solo or small firm thinking this is out of your budget, it's at least worth the free trial because then you can download all the stuff you're going to need and save it to your computer. I access the website for most of the things I need, but if you only have a free trial, you get unlimited downloads. Pull all of those forms you need, pull all of the articles you need to learn, all of the standard clauses, optional clauses, everything like that. Just pull it down and save it. And then you don't really need to worry about practical law until you feel as though you kind of need to refresh your practice. And now being an attorney versus being a consultant or even going in-house for a client, it has come up before, so my clients who especially, send a lot of work, who are really great clients, will sometimes want more access to you. They don't want you working for other people because they want all of your time and attention. And that's a really great spot to be in. One of the things that I think is unique to my situation is that I run my own firm. And so if I worked for a bigger firm, it might be appealing to sort of jump ship and go to a startup or something like that. Where I am now, small business isn't the only thing I do. I do some litigation things as well. And so I like where I am right now. I like keeping that balance for me. Plus, a lot of these companies can't afford to take somebody on full-time or even part-time and pay a consistent salary. So I think it just depends on your client and then really whether or not that's where you want to immerse yourself completely. Because for me, I love small business advising, but I'm not 100% sure that that's the practice area I want to settle in for my career. And so it doesn't make sense for me to jump at those opportunities or even market myself as somebody who's more of a business consultant, because I really don't know anything about the business side when it comes to, business relationships, business growth, SEO. Like, I'm still learning all of those things. And so when my clients ask me, what's your input on the business side? I don't know what the pros and cons of following certain decisions, of taking certain risks are, because that's not my job. My job is to tell you what the right thing to do is, what the safest thing to do is, to try to persuade you to do that safe thing. And if that doesn't work, tell you what the potential pitfalls are and do my best to soften your landing if it gets there. And I like my role as being that person. I don't want to say, I think this would be good for business, I think this would be bad for business. I even tell people, I don't want to tell you what business structure is best for you, because I don't know what your end goals are. Most of the time, they don't know what their end goals are. So rather than consulting and sort of giving that information and that kind of input, I really like sort of limiting myself to saying, here's an S-type corporation. Here are the pros. Here are the cons. If any of these apply to you, it might be a good thing to do. If any of these applies to you, it might be a bad thing to do. And then I have a new question here. Okay. So I don't do flat fee for these types of clients. I did at the outset. And one thing that we did when we started our firm is we sort of marketed ourselves and offered this thing where we're like, during these uncertain times, you want to be able to budget your legal needs. And so, for $2,000 a month, like, we'll be your attorney for any question you have, within a certain realm. And then that way you can budget the amount that you're going to need every month, and it's no surprise or whatever. And I think that can work. I think it would have worked for me anyway. But one thing I found is that it actually wasn't as popular with businesses or business owners as we thought it was going to be. We thought people would like knowing exactly how much they're going to pay, but it turns out that was less important to people than paying for what they're getting. And so there are people, it sort of came down to, well, if we don't have any contracts or anything for you that month, we don't want to pay the $2,000, even if it would save us money later on, because a lot of them are more, understandably focused on getting through everything that's going on right now financially. And so all of them opted to do billing. And so again, if you're a solo or small firm, what do? Billing systems can get really expensive. And so it's a free service, and you can pay for add-ons and stuff called Paymo. And it allows you to basically input your time and then generate an invoice at the end, as well as keep track of the different projects you're doing per client. And so for the clients that jumped early on, we have a slightly lower fee. It was like our opening rate, our regular fee for everybody else. And then I just keep my time for all of them. And there are some months where, a client just inundates me with work and nobody else sends anything. And there are some months when, there's more variety in who is sending stuff. And so, sorry, my allergies are awful. I find for me, and again, you can offer whatever you feel comfortable offering. I didn't get much interest in flat fee. And again, it's also hard because a lot of these clients are coming to you and they might have worked with an attorney a few times. They might say, oh yeah, I typically send it to old Billy out in El Paso and he does it for this much, but old Billy's retiring now, or I don't really like how old Billy handled this last thing. And you say, okay, well, how much do you anticipate, needing your legal needs being a month? They don't ever know. They just know they would send it to Billy, they would get it back, and they would pay the invoice. Very few people can accurately depict about how much they're going to need a lawyer at any given time. And so flat fee is even hard to come up with a number, because again, the difference in time between my software clients and my restaurant clients is immense. And it wouldn't be fair to say, all of you give me $5,000 a month, because they're not taking up the same amount of resources. So I do billing for people, and then I bill for the time directly spent on the projects, as well as anything I need to learn that's very specific, micro niche to that client. When it comes to keeping myself up to date on, global laws and law changes, I don't bill for that. It sucks. But that's really just for me. And I pulled documents down off Practical Law, and I built like a little toolkit for each of these big areas. So I've got EU protections over here. I've got Russian protections over here. I've got, California, entertainment protections down here. And I try to keep each toolkit pretty up to date. So at least, and I should do it more often, but at least once a month I go through and I make sure there's nothing I have to remove from my toolkit, something I have to add to my toolkit, new law that I need to type up a quick summary on and send to the client. Because, another thing that you can do if you're doing this is, and if you're a solo, you can convert it to blog post or a newsletter or what have you. But if there is a big change, or if there is something that clients are consistently coming to you and asking about, you can type up, a brief explanation for them and say, here are sort of the key points you need to know. So that way, when they're coming to you, they've got a basic working knowledge to be able to have these discussions with you. They feel like you are really the best. You're keeping them to date. They feel like, I'm glad I went with her and not old Billy, because you're providing them proactively with information you think they're going to need. And again, you can turn that into a blog post and get that SEO. You can sit members only newsletter, get people to sign up to your newsletters, get that connection in. But really, just as I'm doing these things and I think, oh, this is really important, and you type it up, send it out. Nobody gets billed for that, but I think, and I base this off nothing, that it's generating goodwill, and it will help encourage clients to give good reviews, to give good references. And sort of the last thing I want to hit on is, if this is a place where you want to be, like you want your career to be in small business advising, you really, and I'm going to send out the list of resources after this, but you really want to diversify the kinds of businesses you're working with, because you get one good pharmaceutical company. Yes, they might know a ton of people in the pharmaceutical industry, but a good amount of those are going to be competitors. So you won't be able to really take as much from that networking as you would hope, because it directly adversely impacts your client. So you've got to be able to branch out and be in different areas so that you're not dependent on one client or one sector to bring in business, because especially if it is a small business or a local business, you're going to run out of people real quick. Just because at some point, pretty soon, they're going to be direct competitors. The client's going to be like, I don't really want you working for them, and we can't. So the more you can put yourself out there and go to these events and learn about the different kinds of law, again, hopping on Practical Law and just looking at beauty salon agreements, which I'm confident they probably have on there, or just looking at the administrative code, at the laws, at the regulations, knowing enough to go to these events and have a conversation with people. A lot of people just want to feel like you know what you're doing. And I always tell my clients, I didn't study business. I can't, I have a lot of clients who say, well, Joey told me that he's not going to enforce that. And I believe Joey. Okay. Well, as a lawyer, I just want to tell you that if Joey doesn't fulfill his end of the bargain, these are the potential pitfalls. These are the risks you're running by not contracting. So, well, I know, but if I put that clause in there, Joey will cancel this whole thing and I can't have it. Okay. But again, this is, the risks. This is the laws you might run afoul of. These are the potential repercussions you might face. Joey, Billy, or whoever, I don't know him. I can only tell you I would really do this other thing. And then they're going to do whatever. But as long as you have a toolkit and when that happens, kind of pulling stuff down. So when a client says, I trust him on confidentiality, I'm going to be keeping an eye out for confidentiality articles and reports over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be saving them to my little toolkit just to make sure that if anything ever happens, my advice is the most accurate and up to date. And again, as you go to these networking events, as you meet people in a ton of different businesses, they want to feel like you know what you're talking about when it comes to their business. Just knowing the words to use, just knowing, even if you don't know specifics, what their concerns might be. Like, I know businesses like that run into a lot of regulatory problems or have issues with licensing. And they say, yes, oh my goodness, yes. As long as you know that that's sort of a general thing in that industry, that person now feels confident talking to you. And I promise that even your preliminary research is going to be more than most people in that room have done. And the only person who's really going to know more than you is the business owner, and he doesn't know or she doesn't know anything about the law. They're counting on you for the law. They really, I mean, they'll ask sometimes, what would you do business wise? But for the most part, they know what they want to do. They've got a plan and they just need to figure out how to execute it. So being able to say, I know enough about your industry to help you out, give me the chance to deep dive and do these things. Once you've got a good MSA going, once you've got a good consulting agreement services going, it gets very easy in the same sectors. You know, you see the same problems, you make the same changes all the time. It's just a steep learning curve. And I will send the list of Houston-based areas you can go, Houston-based organizations that offer networking events that connect small business owners, which again, will have a lot of CPAs, insurance agents, a lot of real estate agents, a lot of people who want to help you because it also helps them. So I'll put that list together and send that out after this. Any other questions or concerns? And I will say that each business is unique, but there are big, and you can please type in questions if you have them. It's like closing out. They all kind of fall under big umbrellas. You know, you've got your IP software, you've got your entertainment, you got your recreational, and practical law does a good job of, and so does Google, of giving you what you need to know on the most basic level for each of these areas. And before you really even take on a client in those areas, you want to read through that and just have a general knowledge of what's going to be important, because each business owner brings their own personality and their own sort of spice to these interactions. And so you've got to know what world they're existing in. You know, the entertainment contracts I do, works for hire stuff I do out of California, very, very different world than the people going out to Russia trying to sell their software. Just be aware that these people aren't existing in a vacuum. They're in this world that is completely foreign to you. And so to just have a kind of understanding of what stresses them out, what they're considering, what's important to them in that world, will help you communicate with people in a way that makes them feel comfortable trusting you with sort of their legal well-being. Are we? No problem. And actually, let me go ahead and put my email here. If you guys have any questions or concerns, or you have anything pops up down the line, I'm always looking for more small business advising attorneys to connect with, just because they're good people to know. You know, we've all got resources that we can share with each other. We've all got drafts. We've all seen things. We've all heard things, and we would have heard different and seen different things. And so bringing us together and forming little groups helps a whole lot. So if you have questions in any of the things that we talked about today, I put my email in the chat. Like, please feel free to email me anything. Literally a year ago, I was brand new at this entire world, and now I do pretty okay at it, and I really like it. And so if you have any questions, you're interested in getting into this line of work or growing your line of work, please feel free to shoot me an email. I would say give me a call, but I won't answer. So email.
And yes, the video will be added to the HYLA YouTube channel. It usually takes a couple of days, just depending on, video editing and all that. But yeah, if you check the HYLA YouTube channel, it should be on there, by early next week at the latest. Thank you guys so much. I hope that I was able to help even a little bit, and I will send out the links as soon as I track them down. Yeah. Thank you so much for this excellent presentation, and all the attendees. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciated all the questions that you gave. This was a great active crowd to have, which we always really enjoy having that in our CLE presentations. Keep your eyes on the HYLA calendar. We have the speaker set up, but not the actual topic confirmed yet for our December CLE. And for all of you in the crowd who are enjoying advising small businesses, kind of part of the HYLA president's focus on work specific topics this year for lawyers that are either solos or in small firms. There's going to be another topic for our February CLE that's going to be on key person life insurance, kind of in the realm of small businesses, small law firms. So that should be a really interesting topic if y'all keep your eyes on the HYLA calendar. So thank you all again. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny, for putting this together.
No problem.
Have a good day.
All right. See y'all soon.